I'm Chuck Hayward. I am a writer-producer in TV and film, and excited to talk to you guys today. My first industry job, I got an assistant job as to the vice president of Forrest Whitaker's production company at the time. My friend Manuela, who I went to college with, she connected me with this woman, Arlene, who needed an assistant. And then, boom, I had a gig a couple weeks later, which is crazy because it takes a lot of people a lot longer. So I was really fortunate to have those people there to look out for me. There's a million different ways in, and they're all right because they all get you in there. But yeah, I didn't have a huge network of people, but I had a small network of people who were very, very diligent and useful. And they were all Syracuse alums, so it was from people that I knew from college and further alums from before. So I had used the college career development office to find internships and stuff while I was there. And then once I left college, then I was just relying on all the contacts that I'd made through those internships, and then friends and friends of friends and cousins and friends and basically anyone I could speak to. I would try to just let them know I was here, let them know what my goals were, and see if they could point me in any directions. And people were more than happy to help, and so it was really cool. I came out here and I was like, oh, I'll be an assistant for a year or two, and then I'll write this script, and then I'll sell it, and then I'll be off and running as a working writer. And 9 years later, 9 years of assistanting later, I finally got my first actual writing gig. So it took a lot longer than I thought. So it went from assisting at production companies to PAing on TV shows, to then being a showrunner's assistant, to then being an assistant in business affairs at HBO. And so it was just a lot of basically I was like, whoever needs a job, whoever needs an assistant, I'll go work there. And I was a little bit haphazard at the time, but what it resulted in is me having experience in a lot of different areas. It was feature production, television, sort of the higher ends up like writing and development, and then also contract negotiations. So it was I would love to say that I planned that, various series of experiences, but they all sort of came together, and all of them at different levels were people I knew said, hey, this person's looking for a job. Would you want to go interview for it? So it was trying to do your best at each job so that the people that you're encountering are, thinking highly of you, so that when they make a move, they can help you, or when you're ready to make a move, they can help you in that way. And it's worked. And then as I got, jobs as a writer, same sort of thing. And unfortunately, the first 4 shows that I wrote on were all canceled after one season. So I didn't get a chance to really build, to rise up in rank on one show that stayed put. So I kind of had to start over at the beginning as staff writer a bunch of different times. And then Dear White People was the first show that I worked on that actually went for multiple seasons. So I was able to really not relax, that's the wrong word, but have a stable place to grow and to hone my skills and to get all my insecurities out and really just be able to do the job that was asked of me. And it happened to coincide, that first season of Dear White People, with the sale of my first movie, which was two movies actually I'd shoot back to back. So that was the year, and it was 2016 that everything changed. Everything started to fall into place. I was financially solvent for the first time, which I think a lot of people, there's a misconception of oh, you move out here and everybody's rich and you make a ton of money, and I didn't have savings until 06, and I moved, 16, and I moved here in 02. So that's a pretty good stretch of going paycheck to paycheck and making them stretch as much as humanly possible. And so now it's in a much more secure place, thank goodness. There were moments like that, and I do like to say that I never thought honestly about going home, but I did start looking at gigs, and I'm from Delaware originally, so I started looking for gigs in Philadelphia, started looking for what homes cost in Philadelphia. I was really interested in heading back and sort of seeing what the deal was. And it's kind of darkest before the dawn sort of thing. That's when stuff started to turn around. And I sort of, my mentality was, I moved all the way out here. I've been away from my family during, some really fun years that we could have spent together. So I got to make it work. I'm not gonna, it's got to happen, because otherwise I would have wasted the last 10 years or whatever it was. Like, so that, or 5 years or wherever I was when I was having this conversation with myself. So it's literally was like, you know, for lack of a better analogy, it's like LA's not going to get free hits on me. They've been hitting me. I'm going to get back in there and actually get, you know, have it pay off for me. The similarities I feel like are, you have a lot of people that are in there, funny people, smart people, people who want to get along and not, you know, have any drama. Like when there is drama, everybody's so extra upset about it because it's like, we don't need this. Like we're writing television, we're writing comedies. Like everyone should just be enjoying themselves. So when there is something that throws a wrinkle into that, it's frustrating. But for the most part, everybody wants to contribute and be funny and help other people out. And again, every job is an interview for the next job. So it's like, I want to impress all these colleagues of mine. So if I'm up for another gig and somebody says, hey, you worked with Chuck, what did you think? They can honestly say good things about me. And then the differences, I think, are just sort of in leadership style of the showrunner. So some showrunners really like to stick to like a hierarchical structure in the room where it's, you know, the more seasoned writers are the ones that are doing more of the heavy lifting and the ones that are talking more. And then other showrunners are like, look, I don't care what position you are. If I hired you, you need to be pitching jokes. You need to be pitching stories. You need to be talking about what's going on in your life so it can generate ideas. And that to me is always a much more ideal situation because everybody feels more comfortable. You get a greater variety of perspectives because the problem with the hierarchical structure is that the higher ups have been doing this for a while. They've made a lot of money for the most part. And so their issues, their problems, what's going on in their day-to-day lives is so different from what most people in America are dealing with. So it helps to have younger writers who aren't as financially established, who don't have all the, I wouldn't say bad habits, but like habits of you know, being a TV writer for so long. So you get these fresh perspectives injected into what could otherwise be sort of homogenous. And so I think it benefits you. And to me, when I was, you know, at the lower levels of being a writer, I was kind of like, well, look, they're paying me a lot of money to be here. I should be earning that. I should be talking. I should be pitching. I should be, you know, sharing, whatever. And it just took me a while, I think, to get, like I said, the confidence to believe that my stories were important, or that I should be speaking up and offering this pitch. And even if I'm not getting a laugh or it's not getting traction, this idea, like, just keep throwing them out there. Like, it's a numbers game, and it's less about batting average and more about home runs, you know? Justin was pivotal in changing the trajectory of my career because like I said, his was the first show that I was able to be on for a couple of seasons. And he really talked because I'd had to repeat staff writer. So he was like, look, hang out, you know, like, don't take jobs, like just wait for me. This show's going to get picked up. Cause he had asked me to help him do a joke punch on the Dear White People pilot before it got picked up. So I was like, of course, you know, I'm happy to do that. He'd helped me out doing punch up on my feature script. So I was like, happy to do that. And then he was like, look, I'll hire you. I'll bump you up to story editor. Like, it was the whole, and he was true to his word. And then I was able to really grow and like really find my voice as a writer on that show. Cause I was talking to you about batting average a minute ago. Like, I'd pitch so many jokes that I was like, oh, this would have killed at a dinner party I was at last week, or at, you know, just hanging around with my buddies, and it would fall completely flat in the writers' rooms. And then I would pitch what I consider to be the same jokes, the same kind of jokes in the Dear White People room, and people would laugh, and I'd look like, what the fuck are they? What are they laughing about? Okay, I guess this works in this room. And so that, to me, it really made me feel comfortable, and it really made me feel like, okay, I should be doing this professionally. So yeah, and working with him, I think one of the biggest things he taught me was to not sort of do the tried and true thing, to like think outside of the box a little bit, to be weird, like don't be afraid to be weird and embrace that weirdness, to really look at who you are as a person and put that into the characters so that it feels authentic and it feels real, and to listen to people. Everybody has their areas of expertise. And when you're in a writer's room, like we had, like Leanne Bowen was like a very, very active politically. And so she was able to educate us all on all the politics that were going on, all the, you know, she was, you know, on the, like, democratic socialist sort of side. So like she gave us a lot of info and stuff. I learned a lot of terminology from her, and like that was her big contribution. And then, you know, like I don't know what the fuck mine was. I guess it was just pitching all sorts of crazy jokes about things, but like everybody had, and Yvette Lee Bowser was our showrunner. And so she, you know, brought decades of experience running a show. So she would, her thing she brought to it was, I know how to keep the trains running on time. I know how to be funny. You guys, you know, I'll let you tell the story you want to tell, and here's how we'll get it made. So everybody sort of had we were all rowing in the same direction. So I think that's what that job really taught me. I think it's just taught me to be knowledgeable about and respect what other people do. Being a PA, I was able to go around and talk to everybody in every different department and sort of figure out what their jobs were essentially. So by the time I got onto set at Dear White People at Mixedish, I knew who to talk to if I had an issue with this. I knew who to go to, like, to quickly make a thing happen. And I think that wouldn't have, had I just been given a writing job straight out of college, I would have no fucking clue like who to talk to about what. So I think those experiences were really valuable in terms of that. And then in terms of development, it does help me with what's called development speak, like when you're getting notes from executives. And it used to be a lot more cryptic. Like the executives that I have dealt with in the past tended to be a lot, you had to speak their language, so to speak. And then I feel like the executives that I've been working with on the projects that I'm working on now, I feel like we speak the same language. I feel like they're not doing a bunch of talking around in circles and, you know, avoiding saying the difficult thing or you know, not being afraid to, like, if you disagree with what their note is, they're not like so beholden to that note, or they're not so obstinate about it that they can't be argued into your point, which I think is true collaboration. And I'm lucky, like when I get the notes from them, I can implement them in a way that is ego free. And it's like, all right, like, I'll say, I've been saying to executives a lot lately, damn it, like that, I'm mad at myself because I didn't implement that note before you gave me the note. Like I should have had that in there to begin with. So I'm really lucky to work with just people who get me, I feel like, you know. A lot of what we do, it makes this, you know, working in Hollywood so difficult is that we're all independent contractors. And so you're always, even while you're working, you're looking for a job. So the job search is constant, and it's so fun. Like you spend good chunks of time unemployed, and you're like, it bugs you the first time, and then you're like, all right, whatever. And then like I've had friends and family members who were like, I'm unemployed, I haven't worked in 3 weeks, and I'm like dying, and I'm like, what? I was like, that happens to me several times a year. So it's interesting to sort of see how different those gigs are, steady work versus, you know, what we do. In terms of voice, I think it's one of the strongest arrows in your quiver as a writer, because it's everybody can sort of write. You know, your job when you're a staff writer, when you're working on somebody else's show, is to have your voice, but also mimic the voice of your showrunner so that everything fits in nicely with her, you know, her vision. And then, but when you're working on your own stuff, your voice is super important because it's what distinguishes you from every other writer. Like when I started, I had the sort of mistaken opinion of like, I have to write what I'm seeing in the market. Like if Wedding Crashers is big, I need to write a Wedding Crashers. If, you know, versus no, write what's on my heart, write what I will be the most enthusiastic about, the most knowledgeable about. I mean, it's the oldest advice in the book is like, write what you know. But I think a lot of people, and I don't know if it's self-deprecation or just being overwhelmed by the grandiosity of Hollywood, but we think that our lives are really uninteresting or they're really like basic. So we're not afraid to, but just hesitant to really mine what's going on in our lives to you know, speak out and talk about what our experiences have been. And I think that's super important. I think that's the way, like all the stuff I'm working on now is like, okay, what are the things in society that I see that I think are fucked up that I would like to change? And so it's like, take that thing, turn it into a comedy, and like make sure that people are able to comment on that stuff. And, you know, then little by little, hopefully you've made a little bit of a change. And who was I talking to yesterday? I think it was in the writer's room. They were talking about TV being like on the vanguard of showing people other people's lives. And I talked about how Norman Lear in the late 70s, like all of his shows were, you know, different peeks into different very different, socioeconomic statuses, races, family setups. And to me, that was like, this is what TV comedy should be. And I do think, and it's, no, I'm sorry. I was talking to my friend Randall Winston last night. That's who we had this conversation with. And we were saying how like TV has the ability to, and movies have the ability to really change people's perspectives on things. And we mentioned Will and Grace being such a pivotal show because it helped a lot of people, myself included, feel more comfortable coming out, because it was like, oh, America, straight America loves this show and they love these characters and they don't judge these characters, and they're interested in them. So it's kind of like, it was like, oh, okay, maybe things aren't as bad as we might have thought it was. So if I can provide that for, any other thing in society that I think could use a little bit of fixing, then I've done my job. That's a great question. In the next couple years, big goals to check off. So the first big goal is buy a house. So all the other goals will be in service of that. I want to run my own show, and I'm close. I've got a couple things in development that if they get picked up to series, I will be the showrunner. So like I'm almost there on that. And I'd love to direct an episode of one of those. And then I'd also like to get a big budget feature going. I've had 2 features made already. I've written 2 more, one of which is supposed to go into production next month, and the other, who knows. So, but I'd love to write on, because I'm used to writing on these shoestring budgets. Ugly little secret in Hollywood is that budgets for Black projects tend to be a sliver of what their white counterparts are. So like when you see that a movie had a $22 million budget, you're like, oh, mine had like 2, like, and it's supposed to be the same sort of level of quality. And so I'm as much as writing within those confines has sort of taught me to be a little bit more resourceful. I'd love to have that freedom of just like, hey, I have a big idea, I have a big thought, I want to fucking have people spend money on it and make it look really awesome. So I think that's what those are my main goals. I'd say overnight successes, they are a thing, but I think they are so few and far between. But yeah, no, I'm honestly glad. Like I would have been a mess if I'd gotten successful when I was 24 or 25. Like when I see people like Lena Dunham or Rami Youssef or something, like people that have gotten that level of success and have gotten their voices heard at such a young age. I'm like, those people have it together way better than me, because I would have been like just a hot mess. Like, so I'm glad that I was able to struggle and make mistakes in low stakes situations, so that when I am the boss, I can, I know I have the tools to solve those problems when it actually counts. That's the thing. There is wisdom, obviously, that comes with age if you're paying attention. But yeah, no, I do remember letting go of the dream of like being the hot young thing, like being the hot new young writer on the scene, and it was kind of like, okay, but that's a silly, like that's a really kind of amorphic, like weird goal to have that doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, I'm happy to have it happen when it is. Yeah, what I love about my career, I think, is the variety of shows that I've been able to work on and the quality of people that I've been able to work for. Like I haven't really ever hated a showrunner that I've worked for, which is not normal. It's pretty rare. I've been very fortunate to work for good people who have a vested interest at saying, like, not only like making their show good, but helping you out however they can, because they have a little bit more power. And so I think I'm very lucky to have received that kind of help in various stages. And the things that are still difficult are just convincing people that your idea is going to be good. Like there's different, like you always hear actors talk about like auditioning is one skill, but actually acting is a totally different skill. And so that's sort of the same with writers, because we have to pitch our ideas verbally. And for some writers, that's great. They're outgoing, they have performance backgrounds or whatever, or they're stand-ups, or they're improv veterans or whatever. And so they can go into a room and just, knock people dead. That's not me. So like I get wildly nervous, like fucking flop sweat, like just really anxious. And I'm like, the stuff that I'm saying on this page is good, but you know, I'm developing my skills. I'll try to be a little positive there. I'm developing my skills to be a little bit more confident in that arena. But it's like, if I could just get to write the script, like on the page, that's where I excel. But there's that giant hurdle of pitching in between me and that. So I'm trying to find different ways of you know, not circumventing, but just making that process a little bit smoother for myself. Well, first of all, I took improv classes because that was incredibly helpful. And even those were a little bit less scary because they were on Zoom. So I could, you know, harder for people to see how much I was sweating. And then like, yeah, I thank you for the compliment. I do think that helps me, but I think like my anxiety gets in the way. And then it's like we're talking in little bursts, like, so I can get a thought out and kind of, you know, I'm not trying to remember specific data points that I need to hit, or else other things that I'm about to say doesn't make sense. So it's that sort of that building block nature of pitching that kind of scares me. And then it's having the floor for that long a period of time without any sort of back and forth. So like, fortunately, the last couple pitches I've done with partners. And so it's kind of like, all right, like you can this person can pop in while I take a drink or wipe my brow or whatever it is. So there are ways to sort of help. Those are the ways that I'm sort of trying to get to make these a little bit easier. I've also considered, and you know, I haven't really talked to anybody about this, but being like, hey, I'm only pitching on Zoom moving forward. Like I don't want like the stress, and because you don't realize the stress that is caused by driving across town, trying to make it in time, parking, going up to the waiting area, and then you're sitting there waiting and you're going over your stuff. You're trying not to go over it too much and to make it psych yourself out. The person comes in, they walk you into the room, and you're like those steps are all sort of anxiety inducing in a very strange way. And they also like the eye contact is different. For example, like if I'm talking to you now, I'd have to look down to read and up to you and down to read. On Zoom, I have the people's faces here and my notes here. So I'm talking to them, and they never can really tell. And I'm sorry, they can never really tell unless I, you know, make a blunder and need to be like, hang on a second. Yeah, right, exactly. Which it's easier to sort of, steer into that skid and keep going. In terms of seeking representation, I feel like it's important to find somebody who gets you and gets your writing. Like you can sort of tell, it's like a date. You can sort of tell if, this is a person I could probably have fun with for a couple of, weeks or months or whatever, but ultimately I don't see this going anywhere. You don't want to sign on to a long-term business commitment with that person. So you want representatives who were like, hey, I really appreciated this in your story, and I really appreciated that. Like, look, agents and managers are very good at running game on you. But when they can cite something specifically that they found poignant or they found really funny in your work, and it just kind of shows that they are invested in a way that is going to be beneficial to you in the long term. And then if you have your goals really clearly articulated when you go in with them, you'll be able to better assess whether they can help you achieve those goals or not. Because a lot of times writers will go into those situations. We're meeting with 3 different agents, and they're doing, oh, we love this and we love that. And it's like, we feel so happy to be in that situation that we don't feel like we have the power to sort of interview them as well. Because really that's what, like, they work for you. And so you have to see how these people are going to work for you. Do you guys going to get along? Is that person a little sharky? Is that person the person that you want, out there representing you? Because there've been situations where I've had reps who, business affairs execs, like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't have that person ever call me again. If you want to continue this deal, you need to put me on with your other team member. So if you have a situation like that, then you realize, this might not be the right fit. Or if the contrary, if you think somebody's a little bit too timid and won't be aggressive enough out there, whatever it is, whatever your criteria is, as long as you feel like they understand who you are as a writer, they understand your voice, and they understand what your goals are, and have the resources to help you achieve them. So that's A. B, I think always be writing stuff. Like, there are times, I very few times in my life have I been like, shit, I have to write something, but I don't have any ideas. more often than not, it's like I have all these ideas and I don't have enough time to write them. And so you want to be somewhere in the middle, I suppose. Obviously, it's always better to have more than fewer. But I think like picking material that you want to work on that you set yourself up for success, basically. Like if I'm a black dude from Delaware, like it would be difficult for me to be like, oh, I'm writing this story about a native Hawaiian that grew up on a surf area or whatever. And if you do choose to work on something that's that different from your personal experience, research, and I don't like to do that. So I know some people do. Some people love that stuff. They love to, inhabit new worlds and really stretch their empathy to its limit and getting inside the heads of people with vastly different experiences than they are. I'm also lucky to have grown up around a lot of different types of people. So I don't feel like there's a ton that's out of my realm of experience. So yeah, I think just setting yourself up for success by making sure that you know what you're writing about and making sure that it's something you're passionate about, because there's nothing worse than like staring at a screen. Sorry, let me pivot a little bit to say pre-write. I do very detailed character sketches, very detailed outlines, so that when it gets to the point of writing the script, I'm not staring at a blank page and I'm not writing a scene saying, I'm not sure where this scene goes, because you can't make anything coherent without, with that process. Like you have to sort of know where you're going so that you can get there in an effective and impactful and succinct way. Otherwise it's just kind of rambling. And I feel like you can do that as a style sort of when you get put on, but as executives, as reps, as as buyers are reading your stuff, it's just going to look like you don't know how to tell a tight story. So, and then there are some times when you're in the script phase and you're like, oh, this thing that's made perfect sense in the outline doesn't quite make sense, but it's much better than I'm just writing and it's wherever I'm gonna go where the keypad takes me. Like that is a terrifying idea for me, but there are writers who love it. I'm just that's the advice from what works best for me. It's funny because I started out kind of trying to not put a bunch of myself forward facing. I kind of went into these things being like, what do these people want to hear? And I'll say it. And that to me, it wasn't getting me anywhere. So use those things that make you different from everybody else, that form your unique perspective, and that is your age, your gender, your sexual orientation, your, neurodiversity or whatever, like ability level, whatever, like that. Those things make stories more authentic if you're talking about them in ways that we haven't seen before. And especially with disabled characters and disabled neurodiverse characters, like there's been so few of those. So I feel like that's really a place where we have an opportunity to like push forward. And I mean, we saw Coda won Best Picture a couple of years ago, and then I think The Sound of Metal was that year before. And I'm deaf in one ear, so like those resonated with me very much. But I think, I think not hiding from those things that make you different and really showing the nuance of it. And because I think there's been a push to kind of be like, okay, we're going to put this person in a wheelchair, but it's just going to be, it's just like everybody else, but this person happens to be in a wheelchair. But it's like, talk about what the day-to-day portions of being in that wheelchair consist of, and like what are the frustrations, and what are the things that get a little bit easier because of that. What are the when you get into the minutia, I think it's really what makes things compelling, and it's what makes you sound like you know what you're talking about. So I think leaning into whatever your specific stuff is. And so the slightly non-motivational side of that is that a lot of times you will hear, we like it, we think the writing's really strong, but it's just a little too niche. And so you find yourself like, all right, how can I put in a white straight guy in here so that it's like, and then you just feel icky doing that. So then you try to figure out different ways to sort of make it more mainstream, quote unquote. And then that's just a challenge that you'll have that goes project by project. But yeah, that's the only hiccup you might run into, but there's ways around that. So I always wanted to be both. So I always had a feature sample and a TV sample. So when I would go to agencies to potentially sign with them, it would be like, hey, make sure that there are TV people and feature people in there so that I can, cover all bases. And I had a hard time getting traction with some of, even though, I got representation before I was an actual paid writer. I was still an assistant at the time, just based on different connections that I had. So I didn't have any cachet in the TV world yet. But the TV people kind of took me more seriously, and the feature people sort of, yeah, whatever. But then I think once I moved to a new agency, they gave me a feature agent who wasn't really paying attention to me, and so I was only, I don't know, two years into being at this new place, and two shows into my career. I told my TV guys, like, get that film guy. I could replace that person with a different person, because I can't, like, I signed with this agency because it has multiple departments, and I need those departments to be working for me. And they replaced that person, and the new person has been just like amazing. So I guess, being able to really advocate for yourself in those spaces and be like, listen, I'm not I'm here because you offer all these services. You told me about all these services when we signed. Provide those services, or I'll sign someplace else. Like, it's kind of just what you have to do if you want to get things going. Otherwise, you will stagnate in one half of the career path and get some more traction in the other. And then if that's the case, then maybe your TV credits will help you get a feature. But to me, I wanted to hit the ground running in both areas, and that was my approach.